Hello, hello, and welcome to another Couch Time Wisdom session with yours truly, Pavi Prakash. Before we go on, please make sure you like and subscribe, the button below for YouTube to make sure you get notifications of any new videos that are coming up. And also, please do make sure you follow me on Facebook and Instagram for further thoughts and wisdom. So the topic of today's video is, drumroll, wait for it, expectations. Yeah, I know. We've all been told how bad expectations are. We've all struggled with the weight of other people's expectations, and it's everywhere, right? So the expectations that parents have on us as children, we have on our parents, the expectations that you have of your partners, the expectations you have of your siblings, the expectations you have of your employer, the expectation you have of your employees, the expectations you have of friends, your expectation, the list goes on. The expectations you have of yourself, it's everywhere. And I'm no different from any of you in the fact that I spent the majority of my life entangled in the web of other people's expectations of me. And more importantly, I entangled other people in my own web of expectations of them. And I can tell you this, I was not a happy bunny for the first 30 years of my life. As a child, I expected life to be simple, stable, and fun. And I can tell you there was nothing simple, stable, and fun about losing a mother at a young age and having your life shaken in a way that you could never expect. And it wasn't simple forming a new family with different dynamics on that basis. So when the family dynamic kind of disappointed, I then turned my expectations to my friends. I expected to have the best of friends who would be trustworthy and loyal, who would always have my back, who would be BFFs forever. And time again, that didn't really work out, and that didn't really happen. And this isn't anyone's fault, particularly. Sometimes it was as simple as I moved countries, or they did. We moved schools, or they did. Circumstances led them to betray my trust, or equally circumstances led me to betray their trust. So when the family and friends bit didn't really work out, I then turned my focus to what's next. Yeah, you got it right. Relationships. I thought that going to university, I would have the perfect first relationship, which would be whirlwind romance, which would end up in marriage and 2 kids and whatnot. And my expectations were so high that the first major thing that happened to rock our relationship at the very slightest, I felt that it fractured the very essence of a relationship so completely that there was no coming back. And I didn't even try to come back to it. So with that, I let go of what was otherwise really idyllic, simple, and very sweet first relationship. But I didn't stop at that with relationships. I was resilient, if nothing else. So in my next relationship, I took all my expectations with me. But I did change one thing. I changed my resolve and my commitment to make that relationship work. So I said, no matter what happens, I will make this work. And I did. We didn't let things like the traditional things like religion or family or social expectations, all of that come between us. And this relationship did end up in marriage. But all that happened there was that I transferred my expectations of a relationship into the expectation of a perfect marriage. And women, ladies out there, you know what I'm talking about. It's the crap we've been fed since we've been 5 in terms of the perfect Cinderella weddings, the idyllic husband who's always romantic and always carries you on a horse away to oblivion. My personal version of paradise was lots of cuddles and hugs. The society's vision of what's appropriate in terms of, having kids, a big house, a fat savings account, a steady career, and each of us enjoying each other's company, having common interests, and then like literally riding away in blissful union. Even as I say this, I realize how stupid those expectations were. But I am a lot older and wiser now, but I wasn't then. So when I got an untraditional or non-traditional husband, compared to most people, I was shocked. And trust me, I am so grateful for the fact that I got a non-traditional husband, because he opened my eyes in ways that no one could have otherwise. He really was a turning point in my life and really contributed to who I am today. And he's one of my closest friends and mentors at the moment. But at that time, it was a complete shock to my system. So he was an like a feminist or equalist in every single sense of the word, to the extent that he thought that, and rightly so, that a woman should be able to financially support a man. And that if a man decides to then take off and try and follow his life's passion, a woman should then step into the traditional role of a man and support him financially and support the family financially. And he had other weird and wonderful quirks in terms of shattering my expectations around things like savings and having a family, because he thought that 20s was the time to really enjoy your life, not really have any savings. And why think about kids when you're young and carefree? Actually, why think about kids at all? Let's wait till we're 35 and then even consider whether we want to have kids. So at this point, the disappointment at not having achieved even 1/10 of my expectations around a traditional marriage was so crushing, in terms of the lack of a house, the lack of the white picket fence, the lack of any certainty about having kids, and so on and so forth. It completely crushed me. And it crushed me to a point that I started questioning the universe. I was so angry at the universe to say, why? Why are you doing this to me? Why is it that you cannot satisfy some basic things that everybody seems to want? And why is it just not easy for me? Is it something that I did? Do I need to work harder? Is there, something that I can change in terms of my approach? And as I asked all these questions, I had no answers. The divorce was a turning point in my life, to the point, well, it was one of those incidents where I couldn't fulfill the biggest expectation my family had of me and I had of myself, in terms of having a happily ever after, until death do apart, successful marriage. And when I was going through a divorce, because people were coping with the weight of their own disappointment in me and in my marriage, they weren't able to support me the way that I wanted them to, or the way that I expected them to. They say that there's a scale called the the Holmes and Rahe scale from memory, which talks about all the life incidents that really affect a human being, and they attribute points to these incidents in their terms of the impact that they could have, and actually end up causing illness from a mental health or even a physical illness because of the trauma that they inflict on a human being. And the top 5 things in that scale are the death of a spouse, a divorce or a separation from a spouse, the death of a parent or a child, imprisonment, and oddly enough, marriage. The fifth one was marriage, so funnily enough. So in the first third of my life, I had essentially faced or gone through 3 out of those 5 traumatic incidents, and been so completely and utterly shattered by the experience that I no longer knew what to do with myself. I went through a period of depression and questioning and anger at everyone and everything around me. And it was at that lowest low when I thought, you know what, nothing can get worse. Well, little did I know. Nothing could get worse. People could not have disappointed me any more than they have already. And in a moment of rebellion and anger at the universe, and a proverbial middle finger to everybody around me, I decided to let go of all my expectations of them, and not to expect anyone to do anything for me, and to do everything for myself. And that was when things changed. At that point, with the dropping of my expectations, even though if in anger, I started feeling things shifting. I started doing things for myself, which I traditionally expected other people to do for me. I started taking care of myself in terms of self-love and self-care. I started being kind to myself. I started buying myself nice things. I invested in properties, and I bought my first home. I invested in my own self-development and my future. I protected myself from other people's expectations defiantly and literally unsubscribed from that button and said, no, you cannot have any expectations of me. I protected myself in any and every way possible. And it was at this point that the happiness quotient in my life slowly but surely changed and started increasing. And the past 6 to 7 years have just been an upward hill in terms of, well, when I say hill, an upward procession in terms of happiness, and in terms of the joy I feel in my life. And this has been because of a successive shedding of expectations, a successive letting go of the things that I wanted other people to do for me and just doing it for myself in any way, shape I could. And it hasn't been easy, for sure. Not in the slightest. I'd be lying to you if I said it was. In fact, there have been times where I literally cried in frustration at the universe to say, oh my goodness, this is such a tiny basic expectations. Are you telling me that I have to let go of this as well? There have been times, many times spent in prayer to say, can I not expect this from my family? Can I not expect this of my friends? Can I not expect this of my loved ones? It's so tiny. Come on, universe. And every time at one of those, why me moments of like the smallest expectations, the universe or God or whatever you wanted to call it, would always gladfully give me an experience where the tables were turned and the circumstances were reversed. And I saw myself that I couldn't meet the standards that I would have set in terms of expectations of others. And that's when it dawned on me that people weren't defying my expectations or disappointing me willingly or intentionally. They were just doing the best that they could with the tools that they had and in the only way they knew how to. And when something like, the thing about me is when I'm faced with such a truth, I try not to ignore it. I try to embrace it and act on it. So really it's gotten to a point where now, today, if you asked me, I've dropped even the most selfless of expectations that I've had of people. And that was the expectation that they're happy. You know, they live happy lives, they live life to their fullest potential, and they try to live life on purpose. A couple of years ago, when I was very active in the coaching and public speaking and self-development space, I loftily used to think that this was a good expectation of people. I thought that because I felt it was my purpose to help people achieve their purpose and to help them on their journey of self-discovery and self-development, that they should all just comply, that they should feel grateful that I'm doing this for them, and they should just jump at that opportunity and do everything that I was asking them to do, albeit for their benefit. And there were plenty of times where they would disappoint me from that regard, either because, you know, life got in the way, or because they weren't ready yet, or, you know, they didn't seize an opportunity I thought they should have. And today, when I look at these things, I realize even that expectation, as selfless as I think it was foolish. Because my expectations and my vision of people's highest potential is based on the lessons I've learned through my hard experiences. Perhaps if I was 20 years old and someone gave me all this wisdom that I have today on a piece of paper, or maybe even a YouTube video, perhaps I wouldn't have heeded it fully as maybe you are, you know, doing today, in terms of wondering what is she on about, because you haven't had those experiences. Perhaps I would have had to wait for the school of hard knocks to come along. So who was I to expect people to learn the things that I wanted them to learn? Who was I to expect people to embrace and want to find their purpose immediately just because I wanted it for them even if for their happiness. So that's when I realized even that expectation is unfair. But what I can do to live on my purpose is to put my messages out there, provide people with wisdom at every opportunity, so that if there was ever a circumstance where they wanted my help, they would know where to find me. There's a saying that I love and know, and I apply this in my life all the time in terms of when the traveler is ready, the transport would arrive. And it is my deepest wish, and it fulfills me greatly when I am able to be the transport for seekers and for people looking to find themselves. But it cannot be an expectation that I set on anyone else. So I'll leave you with this thought. We've all been brought up to think that life is meant to be hard. Our parents have done a pretty good job at making us think that. But the thing about life is that it isn't harder than you expected it to be. It's just that it's harder in areas that you didn't expect at all. So we're all tuned and geared up to work really hard to achieve an outcome. But when life knocks you down and gives you a circumstance which isn't ideal, we aren't trained or brought up to embrace that circumstance, drop all our expectations and just say, okay, what do I have to learn, and how do I embrace this circumstance as it is? How do I embrace this person as they are? So I leave you with that thought to sort of munch on and think about, and with a call to action to really think about what expectations are you holding on to of yourself and of other people, and what can you do to let them go? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And if you're struggling with how and why you need to let them go, drop me a line either on Instagram at Black Swan in the City, or direct message me on YouTube or in the comments below. And maybe we'll have a session combining all these questions that you have in terms of how to start dropping these expectations and why it's important to drop these expectations, and some real life scenarios that would really help bring this to life. This is an area that a lot of people struggle with. And even for myself, it's an ongoing journey. I'm not there yet. There are maybe a few things that I still hold on to, and I'm working on letting go. So it would be my honor to help you guys on that journey if you wanted to, in any way, shape, or form. So until next time, lots of love and light to all of you, and good night.